Look, as Simon said, I'm CPO at Telecom at the moment, and what I wanted to cover today was very much more of a personal perspective on, I think, where the industry is at, and it's very much at a crossroads, and cover wider industry trends, some observations that I have, and give you some thoughts and perspectives, and leave you with some questions. And it really is about riding the wave. You'll see here the data storm. It's already here, but it's increasing. And you'll see a lot of the themes that Russell and Alan talked about, probably a bit less cerebral than Alan's, and the graphics aren't as cool, but some of the same stuff. Just starting with observations, and really around some of the trends in the industry. And this is really just my views after 15 years in the industry in a number of roles. You've been through lots of things, seen the internet wave with some of the people in this room. Then obviously 2G, 3G data, OPSEP, structural separation now. Lived through 4 CEOs. So I think we're in quite interesting times. So and very much at a crossroads. And I think Alan touched on a lot of this. He talked about a lot of the challenges. I think one of the key things is we really need to start confronting our brutal reality and moving forward. And I'll give you at the end of this some thoughts on what I think that looks like. So just starting with some trends. And this is, you'll see this is very much mobile broadband centric. It's just illustrative as I go through this of, I think, where the industry's at. And obviously just come back from Mobile World Congress in Barcelona in February, March. And when you come back from something like that, it's very hard to ignore where the industry's going. You're at a place where there's 60,000 attendees and there's just so much going on around you. So I'll talk mainly mobile and really just give you a feel of the trends. And as you'll see here, starting with devices, we are entering a world that Russell touched on, where we're going to have billions of connected devices, always on, incredibly powerful. Up at Barcelona, they talked about a 52 megapixel camera. I'm not sure what you're going to do with a photo that size, but quad-core processors, 5-band chipsets at a minimum, larger screen formats, all of those things. And these are increasingly network aware and network agnostic, and it really takes you to a place where not only more and more bandwidth demands, but devices that are very much for the telcos a parity play at best. There's no source of differentiation here, but you have to embrace this. And on top of those, exploding data-hungry applications. No new news. These things are again also network agnostic, over the top, very network hungry, and always on. And again, no real hard to pick winners here for telcos. So you really just have to ride the storm. There's certainly opportunities in the enterprise market where you can integrate it more into the network in your services, but I think in the mass market, you're talking about devices and applications that are just coming at you, and you just have to embrace that. And when you think about that, and this is a chart, it's been on the internet for a while, but when you look at just the technology disruption that's been occurring, particularly over the last 2 decades, starting with the fixed internet, now moving with mobile data, just the growth rates and penetration. The red line here, the blue line here is obviously mobile internet being driven by 2G, 3G, going to 4G networks, smartphones, and those applications, and the uptake, the Googles and the iPhones. It's a vertical line, and you could look at that in a negative way. But I think it's, as I'm not sure if it was Russell or Alan talked on, this is an industry that's actually helping driving change in the world, and the key challenge for us is how do you make something from that? And obviously, as we've talked, massive data growth. This is just an Intel stat, but 1,000 exabytes of data consumed by 2015, considering where we were only in 1995, and some of us were just studying the internet then, and I don't know if you remember CompuServe and all those sorts of things. Just how far the industry's come in the last 20 years, and the challenging thing for us, if you're looking at some of the things Alan referred to, is this pretty much represents a cost curve for us as an industry, and we have to work out how we what we do with that. And if you flip that around and look at associated revenue opportunities, this is some data we just pulled from Telecom. It's illustrative, but if you look at 1995, when we had dial-up out there at I think 28 and 56 kilobits a second, and you're roughly earning $40 a month, we're looking at earning that or a little bit more on fibre. So in the period of 20 odd years, you're talking 100 times the speed for the same price. Just a little factoid for you. I got some data pulled from our guys in 10ZI on our international capacity consumption. For 150,000 dial-up users in Telecom in 1997, we were using 7 megabits a second. Across the network, 2001, just 4 years later, when we launched Southern Cross, 180 megabits a second, so 2,500% increase just in 4 years. And today we're on or about 35 gigabits, so 35,000 megabits a second. So 500,000% increase in usage, 100 times the speed, same price. So it's an issue, and you can think about it as it's causing quite serious disruption or seismic shifts in our value chain. And no new news. You see value moving to the two ends of the chain. It's going to where consumers see value in the applications they consume and the devices they consume them on. But at the end of the day, it's driving massive bandwidth for the networks such as ourselves, and that's where the investment comes in, and it's clearly not a sustainable equation. And interestingly, we just pulled some more numbers. What customers' value is turning up in company values. If you look at these evaluations on just some companies from April 2000 to April 2012, you'll see, interestingly here, I think when I was back in Extra, Apple was worth about the same as Telecom, and today it's worth just under $600 billion US. It's worth more than Verizon, AT&T, Telstra, Telecom, and a whole bunch of others put together. So it's I think a key learning for the industry is value flows to where consumers see value, and we have to think about that, and I'll cover that in the next section. And when you look at that, we've been through the fixed internet. It's going to get even more challenging in mobile with the explosion there coming. Certainly off a lower base, the data being consumed over mobile networks is nothing like what we're seeing over fixed at the moment, but just on some of the numbers we've run, when you're looking at 4G, smartphones, fibre backhaul, 25 to 40 times data increase over the next 5 odd years, which is just keeping those services running will be a challenge, but it's certainly something that's coming. You just can't ignore it. But it does exacerbate an already broken model. I think this is a Juniper stat from 2008. Back then, year on year, they were looking at circa 400% growth in traffic, 11% in revenue. If you roll forward to today, 2012, traffic growth is even higher, and the revenue is starting to come off. We've seen, I think, in New Zealand, 2 to 4% mobile revenue growth. So I wouldn't go as far as Alan's quote about toast, boiled frogs and dinosaurs, but there's an equation that we have to deal with here. And I think where Alan and the guys were going, I think the model is broken, and it requires us to really think about that and confront it. And at our hearts, it's going to require us to really determine what we think our role is as operators or network investors. And then how do you seize the opportunity? Because there's a lot of, negative sentiment about the data storm, but it's not many industries in the world that are seeing this sort of growth. So you have to work your way through it. So just on that, I thought I'd give you some thoughts from my perspective on how do you ride this wave? How do you see opportunity in the threat? And I think there's some key things we need to do. The first thing is you need to confront your brutal reality. You can't ignore it. I think the industry has been ignoring it for a long time. I think we need to get back to basics and not get distracted by the things we're not great at. And it's going to require a new mindset, which I'll talk about in terms of being more open and partnering. And also being more upbeat as an industry rather than downbeat. And it's also, I don't think we can rely on things and hope for things like regulation. You certainly can't hope for the OTTs to stop. They're only going to get bigger and stronger and faster. So that requires change. And here's just some thoughts from my perspective after watching this unravel over the last decade. So I think the first thing for all the telco people in the room, and obviously people like Telecom, is just to embrace the wave. You have to confront this and embrace it and evolve. And hopefully this isn't too inflammatory, because a lot of people who didn't aren't here today, and some are certainly on their way out. If you look at kids today, they don't really wear watches. They've never heard of Encyclopedia Britannica or HMV or bought a record, let alone a CD. Who was Kodak? My kids certainly couldn't tell you who they were. So I think you can ignore this, but it won't go away. So a big part, I think, is for us all to embrace it and evolve. And a key part of that, and I do believe this is something we as an industry have lost sight of a little bit, is where do you play? And this is just an illustrative drawing. It could be a telco somewhere near you. But you have to be clear about where do you play in the value chain? It's slightly different than Russell's, but similar. And think about, where do you create value, and also if you don't play in certain areas, where do you partner? And that's a key question I think we need to think about, and it goes to the heart of the competition. Thinking, there's some places you compete and some places you cooperate. And central to that, and it's a question we as an industry never really, I think, get to the heart of, is in terms of deciding where you're going to play. You also have to decide how you're going to play, and this is a chart stolen off McKinsey & Co. But the key part you have to ask yourself is, what do customers actually value from you? A lot of people talk about customer value. They only value it if they're willing to pay you for it. So you have to think about customer value at the moment. They're telling you what they value. They value really smartphones with lots of applications. And we have to rework the value equation as an industry and get very clear on that and allocate your investment to those places and partner for the rest. This is my view. What we need to do. I think we need to get back to the basics. I saw I think it was an email somewhere, I can't tell you where for, but fundamentally what telcos do is we build bandwidth and we bill for it. And that's where we need to get back to, is building networks and bandwidth. It's really delivering connectivity where customers want it, what they want it on, when they want it, and how they want it, and ensuring best connected could be one terminology. Getting back to very clear processes around fulfill, bill, assure, and those things, ensuring really great delivery, and just simple things like fixing faults. There's so much more we can do than this, but if you don't do these things, I don't think you've earned the right to play. And in a world of vertical integration, you could ignore a bit of this and get quite excited about stuff at the edge. This is the substructure you build your house on. And so I think this is another key observation from my perspective. I think Russell touched on this. I think this will emerge more and more. I think the people who get this will win. At the end of the day, customer experience will be a defining, if not the defining differentiation point for telcos. Whether you think that's delivering video or great service, better pricing, it's actually end-to-end experience. And central to that is we need to get back to needs before we get to solutions. This is a very good industry at running straight to the product rather than thinking about the need. And I was up in Barcelona listening to Swisscom, who are quite advanced in this, and they put it across really simply. They said needs are verbs and products are nouns. And verbs always last longer than nouns, or needs last longer than solutions. So I think the industry needs to slightly reorientate itself on this one and not get overexcited about marketing the products before you understand the needs. And that includes things, these are just some thoughts: customer journey mapping, end-to-end experience, design. I think you need to see more design in the future, more prototyping, embedding customer into build programs, and probably less traditional market research, particularly with Gen Y and the next lot who are coming down the pipe. Traditional market research won't meet or even understand how these people interact with your networks or your products. I think I stole these off Alcatel-Lucent and Swisscom. The other one is, it's a global game where we're going. It's already there, has been for a long time. I think Alan's point about convergence is real. Convergence has been here for a long time, we just missed it. And got confused. It was about clumsy bundles and billing. It turned up on the handsets and the applications a long time ago. So you need to recognise that, focus on what you're great at, and partner and enable the rest, and find value where you can create it. In many cases, it will be just simply over the top. There's certainly other places. I think telcos using their assets, be it the way we provide services, our billing, our reach, our distribution, the networks. We can certainly look to distribution models for the future. I think, as Russell said, payments is a good example where Telecom, Vodafone and 2 Degrees have got together with banks and have come up with a model that creates an ecosystem that will generate a new market. And that's using the assets we have and we've had for some time. The other one is, call it the details and the data. I think as an industry, we have to get a lot smarter and recognise that in a world of thinner margins, the sharpest axe will win. The tyranny of averaging, its time is over. Back when you're vertically integrated and we thought we were selling, we're actually order taking. You could be a bit, you could average things, you could be more nationally focused above the line. We need to get more granular, particularly on the demand side. You need real-time information that you can turn into real-time insight. whether you're doing that for marketing or agile pricing, your customer service models, but also how you partner, because this is the sort of stuff these over-the-top guys are actually interested in, using behavioural data and those sorts of things. I think where it will go, look, yet to be proven, is supply-side granularity will be just as important as demand-side, maybe take a little bit longer, but the new catchphrase around heterogeneous networks, I think it's where we're going. The design will be far more granular, obviously to drive performance, and also how you put your investment in the ground. We need to be far more targeted in that, and things like policy control will be quite critical. And possibly in the future, one day, you'll see customer design networks almost on the fly. Maybe it's a bit of a science fiction pipe dream, but I think you'll see the demand side and the supply side far more closely linked over time. So those are, done that quicker than I thought. Just some observations from me. I thought I'd just leave you with some questions just to ponder over the next 2 days and beyond. I think these are things that this industry within New Zealand and even globally needs to think about. The first one here is how fast is fast enough? The demand for data and speed is insatiable, but particularly for the people investing in it, it's not generating increasing returns. So there will be an investment challenge that has to be solved at some point, whether that's through public-private partnerships like we've seen with UFB, or better partnerships with the over-the-tops. At some point, the investment challenge becomes unsolvable at current course and speed. So we do need to think about how we solve that one. How much access will be wireless as we move to 4G and in the future, and increasingly people are carrying mobile devices, iPhones, iPads, smartphones. Increasingly a lot of the usage on mobile networks is within the lounge at night. So, what is the interplay between wireless and wired and access and transport? And then what does that mean for things such as fibre? I think a big one for telcos is, as much as we hate the word dumb pipe, is how do you move beyond that, because that's where we're heading, and how do you become a smart pipe, or possibly a distribution platform for communication, entertainment and IT service providers and you may be one of those yourself, but how do you create those platforms that open up new markets? And inside of that, Telco 2.0, I'm not sure if you guys have seen that. It's created out of the UK, who are trying to drive some thinking around a new business model and way of thinking about the two-sided business model, because traditionally the industry is very much sold downstream into retail markets. I think we need to think about how do we get beyond the concept here and open up the upstream opportunities. Payments is one, telemetry, CDNs, smart grids, these sorts of things, because there's a lot of assets we as telcos and operators have that we haven't really exposed beyond the downstream communications industry at this point, and that will require changes in strategies and business models and the way we configure our businesses. And I personally think that's where we need to go as an industry in terms of making the pipe a little less dumb. Another one is customer experience and customer-centred design. How do we think about bringing that to life as an industry? I think we talk about customer service, and that really is the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. I'm pretty sure most customers don't really want to call a call centre, so it's how do you start embedding the customer within your business more, and getting beyond the PowerPoint on that and bringing that to life. We are certainly starting to think about that within Telecom, and I know some other telcos around the world are far more advanced. Swisscom's the main one I've seen, but there's certainly others who have changed their whole philosophy around this and how they design their products and services and the experience for their customers, even with infrared tracking in retail stores, just to understand how customers interact at point of sale. And finally, around that, how can we bring granularity to life? Whether you want to call that the sharpest axe or hardcore analytics, that the industry needs to get smarter and into the detail. Our past of above the line advertising, averaging, those days are over. As someone said earlier, the internet has made everything open. Nothing's hidden anymore. So I think we need to embrace that and really get into the detail, and that's a core source, I think, of where we need to go in the future. So those are just some questions I thought you guys could think about or talk about over the next 2 days and beyond. Certainly things I think the industry needs to consider. So just summarising again my views, I think where we're going as an industry, and it's no surprise that it is all about broadband and mobility for us, whether that's fixed or wireless. When I say mobility, I mean people on the move all the time, always connected, wireless devices, and so that's where the industry is going. Clearly, fibre 4G. I think for us as an industry, we need to focus on the customer experience, regardless of the device, the application, where they are, the location, those sorts of things. And to do that, we need to focus on the connection. As an industry, that's really at the heart of what we do. It doesn't mean it's the only thing you do, but I think everything else comes from that. And in doing that, get very, very clear on what your core competencies are and ultimately what customers value from you as a business. They may value price, they may value speed, but we have to get very clear on that and invest in those places. I think the key defining metric will be, if you're in the connectivity game, it's margin per bit. You can look at all the KPIs you want. I don't think we'll go past this one in the future. And clearly the investment you apply around that, and doing that, delivering against the customer experience, and delivering that in an economic way will require a far more granular approach in all parts of your business. The way you serve customers, the way you sell, the way you market, the way you develop products, the way you build networks. That'll require changes right across the board, the way your corporate centre supports you within finance functions and HR and such like. Because ultimately, as I've said here, it'll lead to real-time marketing, which has been a bit of a catchphrase, but I think it'll be beyond that. It'll be almost real-time network design and build as fast as you can build them. Obviously, confronting things like RMA and the such like, that means it won't necessarily be real-time, but we certainly need to think at a faster pace. And beyond all of that, it's, in my view, you can talk about the hard equation we're dealing with. Exploding data growth drives costs, the revenues aren't growing that fast, but there's not many industries that have the sort of growth we have, so I think we need to reorientate ourselves, and that requires quite a new mindset as an industry, far more open in our platforms and our philosophies and our ways of partnering, because it's not something we're generally good at. You hear people talking about partnering. I've heard it over the years where people talk about partnering and generally they want to bill you for something. I don't think you're partnering until you're sharing revenue, and I think we've struggled as an industry with that. We're getting better at it, but it's a big part of the future. So that's hopefully gives you just some thoughts from me about this, where we're going with the trends at the moment, some observations and thoughts and perspectives. Clearly my views, it may seem a little dull, but I think we as an industry are in pretty exciting times, a little bit dangerous. We could be extinct if we don't handle it the right way. But at the same time, as I've said to my team a few times, the industry is like a drug. It's hard to leave. It's always exciting. It's like a roller coaster ride. So I think we've got a very important role in an exploding market, but we do need to reconsider what our role is and how we change our business for that.